Episode 1 Setup, Stand-Up, covering chapters 1 through 7 of the webtoon. The beginning of the episode starts off almost the exact same way as the webtoon, with only a few minor changes. Starting with the call between Gang, the man on the beach, and Mr. Park, the one in the office. Gang clearly doesn't know who he's messing with, because as you know, Park completely destroys the island. The only thing in this opening scene that I'll mention is after the call ended, they seemed a lot more cocky in the anime, whereas in the webtoon, it looked as though they were more afraid or suspicious of him. We quickly get to know just how powerful these characters can really be if someone can destroy an entire island in seconds, all from the safety of their own office. Anyways, this is where the anime skips a lot of things from the webtoon. My hope is that these parts will be covered later in a flashback or something similar, but since I'm covering everything the episode skipped, I'll still be mentioning it now. Right after the opening theme, they added in a flashback that didn't happen this early in the webtoon. Though it does give us a little more insight into Mori's past and implies that his grandfather had to leave him at a young age. Actually, we don't get a lot of details about Mori's relationship with his grandfather until much later in the webtoon. Right after this, the anime completely skips the last half of Chapter 1, Chapters 2 and 3 entirely, and the first part of Chapter 4. So, what happened in those chapters? Well, instead of moving to a flashback, the webtoon gives us a lot more details on the invitation process to the God of High School tournament. It begins by Mori introducing himself as the best fighter. This is because his grandfather taught him Taekwondo from a young age, and he's been able to clearly see his opponent's punches and is able to avoid them, and according to him, that's why he's never been hit before. After beating someone in a fight, he walks around like a fool, shouting that he's the best fighter, when a mysterious man approaches him, saying that he's qualified to participate in the tournament. Mori isn't interested in this at first, not until R, the commissioner for the God of High School, says that if he wins, they'll grant his wish, giving him anything that he may desire. Well, that's not entirely true, but it did grab his attention for a second. Mori isn't interested until R wounds him with an attack that he couldn't see. At this point, Mori was interested because he knew that this person was a lot stronger than he initially gave him credit for. So he challenges him to a fight and agrees to join the competition if he loses. The next thing we know, Mori's lying on the ground, laying next to the invitation letter. His current fighting record, 297 wins, 2 ties, and 1 loss. Chapter 1 finishes off by explaining that these invitations were sent out all across the world, through Korea, China, Spain, US, France, and more, which gives us a first look into just how big this tournament really is. Moving on to Chapter 2, we meet Dawai Han, a student who's also working a part-time job. Here, we learn a lot more about why he has chosen to participate and about his personality. Dawai often visits a friend who's been hospitalized for quite some time now. The reason he works his job in the first place is to pay for his friend's hospital bill, who scolds him for doing so. After this, it pans back to Dawai at his job, getting a little extra money for his hard work, when a God of High School commissioner enters the store to deliver his invitation. He immediately jumps at the idea and requests $8 million as a reward for winning, to which the commissioner says that he's naive to think so small. He even tells him that he could heal his friend completely if he wins. Actually, the only reason he requested the $8 million was to cover the entire bill for his friend. Initially, he just tosses aside the idea of them being able to heal his friend, and it's not until later that he decides to join. The next scene that we see is of Dawai eating ramen at a snack bar that he often eats at, when some troublemakers bump into him, causing him to spill his food onto his clothes. At first he doesn't mind, and it's not until they take his money and try to make fun of him for having a part-time job when he really takes action. They throw the money back at him, but the next thing we know, they're all on the ground around him. This gives us a little more insight into Dawai's personality and shows us that he's someone who tries to avoid trouble, but he'll definitely make sure they pay if they disrespect him or his friends. this was the tipping point for his decision on joining the competition, and after the fight, the commissioner is standing behind him to confirm that if he wins, they will in fact grant him any wish. This brings us to the end of Chapter 2 and the beginning of Chapter 3. This is where we meet Mireyu. In the anime, she gets introduced by being attracted to the huge muscles that the men have. But actually, in the webtoon, she's not attracted to the muscles, so to speak, but what they represent. How strong the person is. In the webtoon, she's introduced as a clumsy schoolgirl who always wants the strong guy, when in reality, she's a lot stronger than they could ever dream of being. She's talking with her school friends about how she's super smart, but her boyfriend only knows how to fight, who recently became the best idiot fighter. Next, she's walking with her boyfriend when a group of high school thugs show up to harass him about getting payback for beating him up in their last fight. He tells Miro to run, but when she does, she runs into more of them while he struggles in his own fight. But then one of the guys that she ran into walks back, all beat up, saying that she's a monster. And then she fights them single-handedly after throwing her sword down, saying that it'd be a waste to have to use it here. Then it rolls into a flashback explaining why she always goes for the strong guys. Her father's dying wish was for her to re-establish the Yu family moonlight sword style by finding a good seed, which means finding the strongest. After the fight, a god of high school commissioner invites her to participate in the competition. It doesn't say it, but it's implied that she immediately accepts the offer, because what better way to find a good seed than to find the winner of the competition? That brings Chapter 3 to an end, and moving into Chapter 4. Now, we transition back to Mori's fight with R, and here we get a very key piece of information. Mori states that he'll now be using his feet to fight, something he's only supposed to use in fights with strong people. This means that he acknowledges R as someone he can go all out against. He gets back up on his feet and kicks R from top down and breaks the arm that he blocks with. That's as far as this scene goes, but it moves to R reporting to his senior, who makes a remark about his broken arm, implying that it's interesting that a mere participant could inflict such a wound on a commissioner. Now we're finally getting back into the anime, and moving on to Mori waking up late, rushing out on his bike when he sees the purse snatcher. Here, Mori seems to be going into some random assumptions about the old woman's personal life, but actually, it does this because in the webtoon, the woman doesn't just say, "Give that back." She says, "My baby's money for the surgery," which then prompts Mori to go through all of the assumptions and get emotional about it, which leads to the chase scene that you see in the anime, which is pretty true to the webtoon, except for the fact that Mori doesn't hit Mira in the face with his bike. This brings us to the beginning of Chapter 5. Unlike the anime moving straight into the competition, the webtoon moves to the world affairs. Here, the President of the US is in the Pentagon building discussing the matter of Chapter 1 and the destruction of the island from the beginning of the episode, when Mr. Park breaks through all 120 floors to talk with the President. This scene may seem random to implement, but it's used later to amplify the power scaling within the world. I also think it's worth mentioning the scene where it shows a man flying on a plane. If you look closely, you can tell that it's Mr. Park because he's wearing the same clothes from the phone call scene at the beginning. It's interesting to note because this implies that he's either on his way to, or more likely, on his way back from the meeting with the President. Now we move to the competition being explained. It goes pretty much just like the anime portrays. The three main characters so far chat for a bit before the fight begins. While the anime only shows the physical fight test, the webtoon mentions that there's actually a hidden psychological test within how it begins. The sudden order to fight right in that moment drives many people to many different conclusions on how to react. Since the participants can see everyone else's levels, some people cling to their higher levels, while others cower in fear. but the ones who trust in their strength without taking note of the levels at all, those are the ones who will advance. And then the fight begins, as you see in the anime. The one thing I will mention though, is that the anime shows Mori begin his fight using his legs and kicking, rather than only using his fists. Like I said earlier, Mori only uses his legs to fight when he's fighting an opponent truly worthy of going all out. I think this is an important thing to mention because at the end of chapter 6, they note that Mori's level is only level 6, and is the reason why in the anime, the group runs at him and shouts, "He looks weak." But he's only level 6 when he doesn't use his legs. To put this in perspective, most of the extra characters are level 4, 5, and 6, with a few higher than that. Mira and Dwight are both level 9, and Manseok Kang, the man who joins the fight late, is level 12. In the anime, he is handicapped. I'm not sure the reason why they added this, because in the webtoon, he isn't presented with a handicap at all, though it could be because he hasn't yet used his arms to fight. Anyways, in the webtoon, Mori meets him before Mira, except Kang completely ignores him because he thinks that Mori is just a newbie due to his low level. From here, the fight plays out the same, and the episode ends when they both jump at each other. This brings us to the end of the episode, but not the end of chapter 7. The chapter continues when we see Mr. Park meeting with the president, and he dramatically states, "From now on, nuclear bombs will no longer be useful as a weapon." This statement just goes to show you how powerful these people really are, and the magnitude of the God of High School competition. Thus bringing us to an end of chapter 7 and to the end of this episode of Cut Content. Since this is my first episode of Cut Content, all I've really done was show you what they skipped and the things that they changed. But if in future episodes you'd like to see me delve deeper into the meaning behind why things are happening or the philosophy behind the episode, leave a comment below to let me know. And before I go, I wanted to give a big thanks to the Trash Taste podcast crew who really got me motivated into starting my YouTube channel, and to Annie News for giving me the inspiration for my first video. I always liked watching his Cut Content videos, and seeing how God of High School just started, I saw this as a good opportunity for me. So, anyways, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more anime content like this, subscribe or leave a comment below to let me know. Maybe even tell me what other series you'd like to see a Cut Content for as well. And with that, hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.